The alien city was alive with music, lights, and wild laughter. Towers of silver and black metal glowed under a burning sky, decorated with streams of fire that stretched high above. Ships flew in circles like hunting birds, leaving bright trails behind them as a symbol of victory. Across the plazas, alien voices shouted in celebration. They had done something their history would remember forever. They had destroyed a human colony, and to them, it was more than a victory. It was proof. Proof that humans were weak. Proof that humans were nothing more than stubborn animals with soft flesh and fragile bones. The alien leaders stood on tall balconies, drinking from crystal cups filled with shining liquid. Their teeth were sharp, their eyes glowing, and their armor polished like mirrors. They looked down on their people as fire dancers spun across the streets. Explosions of light lit up the sky. Not weapons this time, but fireworks shaped like blades and beasts. They called it the celebration of fire. They believed it marked the day. Humans were finally broken. One alien commander lifted his arms high and shouted to the crowd that no human would dare rise again. The audience roared with approval, slamming their fists against the stone ground, shaking the plaza as if the planet itself joined in. They mocked humanity openly. Some wore masks shaped like humans with weak faces, bending and crying in false fear. Others painted their skin with red and black, pretending to be covered in blood. They laughed as they danced, imitating human screams with twisted voices, showing how icily the colony had been burned to ash. They told stories of how humans begged for mercy before being silenced, though none of it was true. The truth did not matter. What mattered was their feeling of power. What mattered was their belief that the humans would never recover. In the heart of the plaza, they built a giant statue of fire. It showed a human figure kneeling, broken, holding out empty hands to the alien emperor. The crowd cheered as flames consumed the figure, turning it into smoke. They shouted one phrase again and again until it shook the walls of the city. Humans are finished. But far away, hiding among the stars, one broken ship drifted in silence. Inside, a single human survivor sat in the dark, the weak lights of the cabin glowing against his face. His skin was covered in ash, his uniform torn, his eyes red from smoke and grief. He had seen it all. He had watched his people burn. He had listened to the voices of children silenced in fire. He had smelled the smoke of homes turned into dust. And he had not died with them. Not because he wanted to live, but because someone had to send the message. His hands shook as he typed into the console, his voice rough as he spoke. He told Earth what had happened. He told them who was responsible. He whispered the name of the alien world that had sent their armies and burned. His colony. His voice broke, but his message carried across the void. Somewhere in the darkness of space, his words reached listening ears. Back on the alien homeworld, the celebrations grew louder. The leaders toasted each other, their voices proud, declaring that history would mark this day as the true victory of their species. They sent recordings of the celebration across the galaxy, making sure every world saw the downfall of humans. They wanted all races to laugh at the weak creatures who dared to resist. They believed fear had ended. They believed resistance had ended. Their laughter echoed across the cities like thunder. But none of them knew that their celebration was too loud. None of them realized their enemies were listening. None of them imagined that Earth had already received the message, and Earth did not forget. Earth never forgot. In the shadows of the celebration, one alien soldier stood apart from the rest. His armor still carried the smell of human blood. His hands still remembered the heat of fire. But something in his mind would not let him laugh. He remembered the last human he saw before the colony was destroyed. The man did not scream. Man did not beg. He only looked at the alien soldier with eyes that held something sharp, something unbroken. It was not fear. It was not weakness. It was something else. The soldier had walked away quickly, trying to bury that look in his mind. But now, as the fireworks cracked above and the crowd screamed, he remembered it again. And for the first time that night, he felt a small shiver under his armor. He tried to ignore it, tried to believe like the others that humans were finished. But deep inside, he wondered if they had made a mistake. The alien leaders stood at the highest tower, raising their cups to the stars. They spoke words of triumph, promising to burn every human world they could find, promising to erase the species from history. The people cheered again, throwing fire into the air, singing songs of victory. The city was drowning in noise, but above it all, the stars stayed silent, the same stars that carried the human survivors' broken whisper. The same stars that now watched the aliens with cold indifference. The same stars that had seen countless empires rise and fall before. The aliens did not care. They believed they had one. They believed this was the beginning of their age. They believed the humans were gone forever. They did not know that at that very moment, on the other side of the galaxy, Earth's eyes had opened. They did not know that something was already moving in the dark. They did not know that the celebration of fire was also the beginning of their end. The signal reached Earth as nothing more than a broken whisper across endless space. Static filled the screens of the command center, words cutting in and out like gasps for air. The operators leaned closer, straining their ears as a faint human voice struggled against the noise. They caught only fragments. Fire, colony, gone, revenge. The room froze as the final part of the message played clearer than the rest. The survivor spoke a name, the name of the alien world that had ordered the attack, and then silence swallowed the transmission forever. For a moment no one spoke. The weight of the voice lingered in the room like smoke, heavy and sharp. Officers stared at one another, unable to decide if they had just heard the last cry of a dying man or the call to war. The commander of the station, an old woman with lines of steel across her face, stood slowly and ordered the recording played again. This time she listened not only to the words, but to the sound beneath them. The voice shook, but it did not break. It carried pain, but also fire. She knew immediately what had to be done. She gave one order. It's quiet but absolute. Remember their world. The order spread like lightning through hidden networks and dark channels that only a few knew existed. On the surface, Earth still appeared peaceful, its cities glowing under calm skies, its people working and living as if nothing had changed. But beneath the surface, in the silence of deep military bunkers, doors long sealed began to open. In secret shipyards hidden behind moons, machines that had slept for years awoke with a low hum. Engines stirred, systems blinked alive, weapons charged in silence. Humanity had not been idle in the years of watching alien empires grow arrogant. They had built, prepared, and hidden what the galaxy thought they could never create. The news of the colony's destruction spread among human leaders like a storm. Some cried for patience, for caution, but their voices were drowned by the memory of burning families and lost children. One after another, leaders rose and agreed on the same path. It was not about survival anymore. It was about memory, about sending a message that would echo across the stars. Earth would not only strike back. Earth would erase. In the quiet of a dark hangar, soldiers gathered, their faces lit by the glow of steel ships. They did not speak loudly. They did not cheer. Their silence was heavier than any battle cry. Each one had seen the recordings of the destroyed colony, and each one had sworn the same silent vow. They carried no joy, only purpose. The survivors' whisper had not only reached Earth's leaders, it had reached the hearts of millions. Mothers whispered to their children that justice was coming. Workers spoke to each other in hushed voices, that Earth's hand would soon close around the alien world. Even those who had doubted humanity's strength now stood in cold agreement. No race could burn their people and expect to celebrate forever. In the shadows, Earth was uniting with a fire greater than the aliens could imagine. Far away, on the alien homeworld, the celebration still roared. The streets were filled with dancers, the skies with glowing ships. They believed the humans were gone, and their laughter echoed across the stars. They did not know that every spark of their fire was being watched, recorded by hidden human eyes. Cloaked probes drifted near their borders, capturing their arrogance, transmitting their weakness. The alien emperor stood on his balcony, raising his blade-shaped cup to the sky, declaring that humans were nothing more than ash and dust. He did not know that his words were carried straight to Earth, where commanders watched him speak as if he were already standing in a grave. The galaxy was watching too. Other species received the alien broadcasts of victory, and many of them laughed. But a few of them turned uneasy, remembering whispers of human resilience. Remembering old wars where small victories had turned into great disasters. A quiet fear began to spread, though no one spoke it aloud. What if the humans were not finished? In the command chamber on Earth, the old commander stood in front of a massive screen showing the alien world. Her eyes were hard, her voice calm. She turned to her officers and said that they would not answer with words. There would be no messages, no warnings, no diplomacy. The aliens had burned a colony, and so Earth would burn their home. Orders were sent. Ships began to move, silent and unseen, leaving their docks like shadows slipping into the night. Engines did not roar. Weapons did not glow. Humanity did not announce its coming. It moved with patience, like a predator waiting for the exact moment to strike. For the first time in centuries, Earth was not reacting. Earth was choosing. The choice was clear. The survivor of the colony, still drifting in his broken ship, did not know if his message had been received. His eyes were heavy, his body weak, but his mind replayed the images of fire again and again. He whispered to himself in the silence, promising his people that they would not be forgotten. Somewhere deep inside, a faint hope sparked, a belief that his whisper had not been lost. He imagined Earth listening, imagined them moving. And though he was alone in the darkness, a small, tired smile touched his lips. For in his heart, he felt that vengeance was already alive. The alien empire's capital city glowed brighter than ever, its towers painted with firelight, its plazas filled with laughter and pride. The leaders gathered in a vast hall built from black stone and silver veins, a place where their ancestors had once declared war on other races. Tonight they used the hall to celebrate again, raising their voices and cups to honor the destruction of a human colony. Their words rang with arrogance as they spoke of their victory, promising that the galaxy would soon forget humans even existed. They declared that the memory of Earth would fade like dust, and all that would remain would be stories of their own glory. Their generals stood tall in shining armor, their soldiers cheered with blades in the air, and their people believed that this was the birth of a new age. They laughed at the idea of human resistance. To them, the humans were too soft to few, too primitive to matter. Yet, while their voices rose in celebration, the shadows of the galaxy were already moving against them, silent and patient. On the far side of space, human fleets gathered in hidden stations, their dark hulls glinting under faint starlight. No songs echoed in their halls, no laughter filled their rooms. There was only the low hum of engines, the metallic clatter of weapons being loaded, and the steady voices of commanders giving orders. The survivor's whisper had ignited something inside every soldier, something older and stronger than fear. They did not prepare for battle with joy. They prepared with cold silence, the kind of silence that comes before a storm, in secret meeting chambers across Earth and its colonies. Leaders stood around maps of stars, their faces pale under the glow of strategy screens. They traced the paths of fleets, marking where the alien defenses would break, choosing how the enemy's homeworld would be cut off and strangled. Every word spoken was heavy, for they knew what this meant. It was not a battle to defend. It was not even a war. For survival, this was a strike of memory, a strike of vengeance, a strike that would echo across history. Some whispered warnings, speaking of the dangers of waking the galaxy's fear, but their voices were drowned beneath the weight of the dead. Humanity had suffered, and now humanity would answer. The gathering storm was not fueled by pride or hunger. It was fueled by grief sharpened into steel. Every soldier who boarded a ship carried the image of the burned colony in their heart. Every pilot who sat in a cockpit thought of the survivor's broken voice. Every commander who signed an order remembered the fire that had consumed families and children. They did not move for glory. They moved for the silence of graves that demanded justice. Meanwhile, the aliens boasted louder. sending messages across the galaxy, daring any race to challenge their power. They displayed images of the destroyed human colony as trophies, mocking Earth's weakness in public. They called themselves the Fireborn, the Masters of Ashes, the Eternal Victors. In the Great Hall of the Empire, their emperor raised his hands and declared that soon they would burn Earth itself, that soon humanity would be nothing but dust, scattered among forgotten stars. His people roared with approval, striking the ground with their weapons until the hall shook. But among them, there were whispers of unease, small voices that doubted the victory was complete. Some soldiers remembered the eyes of humans who did not scream, the defiance in their silence. Some wondered why the humans had not answered yet, why no fleets had appeared in defense of their colony. Roar of the crowd, but they lingered like shadows in the back of their minds. The emperor and his council did not care. They believed the humans were broken, and so they celebrated, blind to the storm rising in the darkness. On the edges of alien space, strange reports began to appear. Patrols sent to distant sectors vanished without a word. Outposts that once glowed with signals now lay silent, their lights extinguished. The Empire's commanders dismissed it at first, calling it error, calling it malfunction. They believed nothing could touch their fleets, nothing could challenge their strength, but deep inside, the truth was already there. Humanity was moving, cloaked in silence, cutting off the edges of the Empire one piece at a time. They were preparing the path, closing the circle, tightening the noose. And all the while, the aliens laughed, still believing the galaxy belonged to them. They did not see the fleets gathering in the dark, did not hear the hum of engines, waiting for the order to strike, did not feel the storm building above their heads, ready to fall. The survivors' whisper had reached Earth, and Earth had answered. The gathering storm was no longer a dream. It was real, it was vast, and it was coming straight for the heart of the alien homeworld. The alien homeworld woke to a sky that did not look like its own. First it was only a ripple, a strange shimmer at the edge of the atmosphere, a distortion that made the stars blur like water. Farmers in the fields pointed upward, children stopped their games, and soldiers on guard raised their eyes in confusion. Then came the sound, a deep low hum that shook the bones, a sound that was not thunder but something older and heavier. The skies cracked with light, white and sharp, as if the universe itself had been torn open. Out of that tear, shadows emerged. Vast and countless, their outlines black against the fire of the stars. They came in silence at first, their engines hidden, their weapons quiet. Then one by one, their lights flickered on, not gentle lights, but the glow of warheads and cannons. Awakening from slumber. It was the human fleet, larger and darker than anything the aliens had imagined. Ships built not for beauty but for the cold truth of war. The first scream rose from the alien city as people realized what was happening. Panic spread through the streets, soldiers scrambled, alarms wailed, and commanders shouted, orders too late. The sky above their world was no longer theirs. It belonged to the storm that had come to collect the dead of fire. The alien emperor stood on his balcony, staring at the horizon where the ships multiplied like shadows of death. His face hardened, but his hands trembled against the edge of the railing. For all his arrogance, for all his certainty, he had not expected this. His generals rushed to him, shouting that defenses were being prepared, but their voices carried fear. They knew the truth. The human fleet had not come to fight for territory. It had not come to demand surrender. It had come to erase. Across the planet, anti-ship cannons rose, energy shields flared into existence, fleets scrambled from hidden hangars to meet the intruders. The sky turned into a battlefield of light, beams, and missiles crossing in every direction. But the humans did not falter. Their ships cut through the defenses like blades through cloth, moving with precision, striking with silence. Every time an alien ship rose into the sky, it was met by a human vessel larger, faster, stronger. Explosions lit the horizon as alien fleets crumbled within minutes, their cries of desperation echoing across the com channels. Civilians ran through the streets, their celebrations turning into chaos. The joy of last night collapsing into terror as fire fell from above. The celebration of fire had ended, and a new fire had come. one they could not control. In the command chambers of human flagships, officers stood cold and steady, their eyes fixed on the destruction. They gave orders without anger, without hate. Their voices sharp and controlled. Were not there to toy with the enemy. They were not there to speak. They were there to deliver justice. One admiral whispered the words of the old commander back on Earth, "Remember their world." And so they remembered. Every blast of plasma, every missile that fell, carried the weight of the burned colony. Cities on the alien surface lit up like broken lanterns, their towers shattering, their streets cracking under the assault. The people screamed for mercy, but no reply came. The same silence they had given to the humans was now their answer. Soldiers tried to fight back, but their weapons could not match the fury of Earth's storm. Whole battalions vanished under the rain of fire, their courage burning away as quickly as their armor. The aliens, who once believed themselves invincible, now looked to the sky with horror. The gods they had mocked were real, and they had come in the form of humans. Amid the chaos, the alien soldier, who once doubted, now stood frozen on the battlefield. He watched as the human ships cut through their defenses, as fire rained down, and his mind replayed the memory of that last human's eyes. He understood now what that look had meant. It had been a promise, not of surrender, but of return. And here it was, vast and unstoppable, painted across the sky. His comrades screamed orders, telling him to fire, to fight, but his hands shook. On his weapon? What was the point of fighting a storm? He realized the truth too late. The humans had never been weak. They had only been quiet. And quiet things, when broken, came back louder than anyone could bear. The Emperor's palace trembled as the ground shook with impact after impact. His guards begged him to flee underground, but his pride held him in place, his eyes locked on. The sky torn apart by fire. He shouted curses at the humans, his voice lost in the roar of explosions, promising that his people would never bow, that their empire would rise again. But even as he spoke, another blast tore through the horizon, and the sky itself seemed to fall. The people of his world had once celebrated the burning of a colony. Now they watched their entire planet drown in the same flames. The difference was simple, yet absolute humans did not celebrate. Humans avenged. And as the fleet pressed closer, their weapons falling like endless rain, the alien homeworld realized the storm had only just begun. The alien homeworld, once filled with laughter and firelight, was now drowning in smoke and screams. The great plazas where dancers had mocked humanity were shattered into ruins. The statues of victory broken and burning in the streets. The sky was no longer a festival of color, but a storm of falling ships, each one tearing through the air like a spear of vengeance. The celebrations had ended so quickly that some could not believe they were real. Just hours ago they had sung songs of power. Now their voices were hoarse with terror as they begged for shelter, their feet pounding against broken stone as they searched for places to hide from the fire that rained down from the sky. The air itself was thick with ash, heavy with the stench of burning metal and flesh. The silence that followed each explosion was worse than the noise. It was a silence filled with dread, the kind that made every heartbeat sound like thunder in the chest. The humans had come not as conquerors, but as executioners, and the aliens knew it. The fire they once celebrated had returned, but this time, it was theirs to endure. The alien generals shouted orders through broken comm lines, trying to hold their armies together, but every command was drowned out by static and screams. Fleets that had once been the pride of their empire lay scattered in the dirt, burning wrecks across fields and seas. Their defense towers, which had stood tall for centuries, crumbled one by one as human weapons struck with unrelenting precision. The Empire had always believed its power unmatched, its technology supreme, but the humans revealed truths they had never imagined. Ships that moved without sound, weapons that burned without light until impact, strategies that cut deeper than steel. Every alien soldier who fired into the sky knew in their heart that it was hopeless. Their enemies were not fighting for territory. They were not fighting for resources. They were fighting for memory, for vengeance, for a promise kept to the dead. The aliens began to understand what that meant, and terror settled in their bones. They realized their empire was not just under attack, it was being erased. In the palace, the emperor sat on his throne, his face pale with fury and disbelief. His council argued loudly around him, some screaming for negotiation, others demanding the use of forbidden weapons. But all their words were meaningless. Messages sent into space received no answer. Pleas for mercy fell into the void like stones. Into the sea. The humans did not reply. They did not threaten. They did not warn. They struck with silence, the same silence the aliens had given to the colony when they burned it. The emperor rose and shouted that their spirit was unbroken, that the humans would tire, that their world would endure. Yet even as his voice echoed, through the great hall, the walls trembled from the impact of another strike, and dust fell from the ceiling onto the heads of his trembling council. His words rang hollow against the thunder outside, and in the eyes of his people, hope drained away like blood from a wound. On the battlefield, the alien soldier who once doubted stood among the ruins, his weapon still in his hands, though his grip was weak. Around him, the cries of his comrades filled the air, mixed with the roar of collapsing towers. He fired once into the sky, but his shot vanished into the darkness without effect. He sank to his knees, the weight of realization crushing him. He remembered the eyes of that last human he had seen, the quiet promise of vengeance, and now he understood it fully. This was not a war of equals. This was a storm answering a flame. This was a silence that spoke louder than all the celebrations of his people. He lowered his weapon, his chest rising and falling in ragged breaths, and whispered, words his kind had never spoken before. We should not have touched them. The cities burned. The seas boiled. The skies cracked with fire. The empire that had laughed at humanity was reduced to ashes within its own borders. The voices of arrogance, the songs of celebration, all were gone. In their place was only the sound of destruction and the haunting quiet that followed each blast. The alien civilians huddled in the shadows of broken walls, covering their ears against the roar, waiting for an end they could not escape. Some prayed to gods who did not answer, others cried for leaders who could not save them. In silence, knowing that nothing could stop what had begun, the celebration of fire had become the silence after celebration, and in that silence, they heard the truth. Humanity had not been destroyed. Humanity had not been broken. Humanity had been waiting. And now they had shown the galaxy what happened when their patience ended. Above the ruined world, human ships continued their work, their weapons striking with precision, their formations unbroken. Inside the command, center's human officers did not smile, but they did not cheer. Their faces were cold, their voices steady, carrying out their orders with the calm of surgeons cutting out a disease. For them, there was no joy in this. There was only duty. They remembered the colony. They remembered the children. They remembered the voice of the dying man who had sent the whisper across space. They would not stop until the message was answered in full. One by one, alien defenses fell silent, their lights dying like stars consumed by darkness. And as the fires spread across the Empire's greatest cities, the galaxy held its breath, watching the impossible unfold. The aliens had celebrated too early, and now there was nothing left to celebrate at all. The alien homeworld lay in ruins, its once bright cities nothing more than fields of ash and broken stone. The sky that had glowed with fireworks during their celebration was now dark, filled only with smoke and the silent shadows of human ships. Drifting above, fire still burned in the wreckage, but even the flames seemed weak, starved of the arrogance that had once fed them. The alien emperor's palace, the symbol of their power, was shattered in half, its towers leaning like broken teeth against the horizon. No voices rose in song, no laughter echoed in the streets. The silence after celebration had become complete. In that silence, the humans delivered their final answer. They did not send messages of victory. They did not raise banners. They did not mark themselves as conquerors. Instead, they moved with calm precision, dismantling what was left, ensuring that the world which had mocked their dead would never rise again. One by one, human commanders gave quiet confirmations. Was finished. The promise had been kept. The survivor's whisper had become truth. Far from the battlefield, the wreck of his drifting ship, the last survivor of the colony, lay weak but alive. His eyes half closed as the faint light of a human vessel filled his cabin. Rescue had come at last, though he did not know it yet. His mind was still filled with fire and screams, but through the haze, he imagined the sight of the alien homeworld burning just as his colony had burned. He whispered to himself, barely strong enough to form the words "colony avenged." Those two words, fragile and quiet, carried the weight of every human soul that had been lost. His voice was small, but the echo was vast, for it matched the silence of the human fleet still circling the ruins of the enemy's home. The whisper that had once crossed space had grown into a storm. That storm had now left behind only echoes of fear. Across the galaxy, the images spread. Other civilizations who had laughed with the aliens now watched in disbelief as entire cities turned to ash, as an empire that had seemed invincible crumbled in days. Worlds that had once mocked humans as weak now fell into silence, staring at the proof of what humanity could do when pushed beyond the edge. The story moved faster than light itself. It was carried in frightened whispers across trade routes and in cautious reports from distant outposts. They spoke of a species that had been mocked, cornered, burned, and left for dead, only to rise with a fury that no empire could withstand. They spoke of the day humans erased a homeworld. Fear replaced laughter, and respect replaced arrogance. From that moment, the galaxy learned a lesson carved in fire. Never celebrate too early when fighting humans. The alien soldier who had doubted stood among the ruins. His weapon gone, his armor scorched, his eyes filled with disbelief. Around him, his people knelt in despair, their cries breaking the silence of the dead cities. He had once thought his empire eternal, his people invincible. But now he saw the truth. The empire was gone, and all that remained was the memory of its arrogance. Thought again of that human he had seen before the colony fell. The one who did not beg or scream, but stared with eyes that promised something greater. Now he knew what that look had meant. It had been a promise that humans would not stay down, that they would return, that they would answer. The soldier fell to his knees, staring at the human ships above, and whispered words his kind had never spoken before, "Forgive us." But the ships did not answer, for forgiveness was never part of the promise. In the human fleet's command ship, the old commander stood silent as reports came in. Victory was confirmed. The alien empire was finished. The screens showed endless fields of ruins, smoke twisting upward like the last breath of a dying world. The officers waited for her words, but for a long time she said nothing. Finally, she whispered the same phrase she had spoken when the message first arrived. "Remember their world." Her voice carried through the fleet, and every soldier bowed, their head in silence. There would be no celebration. There would be no cheers. This was not triumph, but justice, and justice carried no joy. The humans knew the galaxy was watching, and they did not care. What mattered was that the dead were remembered, and the promise had been kept. When the human fleets finally turned away, leaving the alien world in silence, they carried with them more than victory. They carried a new shadow that would follow them across the stars. The galaxy now feared them not because of numbers or weapons, but because of something deeper, something far more dangerous. Humanity did not start wars, but when forced, they ended them completely. They did not forget their dead, and they did not forgive. The echo of revenge followed the ships as they slipped back into the void, leaving behind only smoke, silence, and the memory of fire. And in that echo, the galaxy whispered a new truth. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not broken. Humanity was the storm, and when the storm came, nothing could stand.